In this section, we are going to discuss about updating the source code on the respective repository. When I say that you are going to update the source code, it means the development which you do that generally happens among team members. Now, there are multiple team members working on the same code. They are working on different modules. So first thing is that you need to merge all the modules properly. Not only that, you need to manage the code in such a way that you can undo at several level, or you can have the latest code also whenever somebody wants it to develop it further. For this kind of management, there are various tools available. GitHub is something which we are going to see. There are also tools like Tortoise SVN, SVN, TFS, and many more. But we are going to see GitHub as it is open source and used extensively for the same purpose. We'll begin with the official site. I'll say github.com. Now the first thing is that we have to create the repository where we are going to update the source code. So here I'm clicking on the new button. And here you can give the name of the repository you want. Let's say our repository name is eStore. So I give eStore here. We have two options here, whether you want this repository to be public or private. Now I am selecting private here because the repository which is created, that I'm going to share with various members, or you are going to share with various members of your team. So the private repository is shared among various developers in your team only. Now let's create the repository. Now you see that the repository is created. Now to work with GitHub, you have two main ways. One is that you go with the GUI, that is the graphical user interface, or you can use the CLI, that is command line interface. We are going to deal with command line interface. GUI is anyway easier, and as we move on, we are going to see it. So let's begin with few command lines here. So to make the Git available for command line or GUI, first of all, we have to download Git. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm clicking on this link and click on this download. If depending on your operating system, it will show you the download link, and you just have to download this. Now this you just save, and then you can just follow the instruction for installation, and then the Git is available in your system. Now to check whether Git is installed or not, I'm going to type Git here, and you see that some help and the other information is displayed at the terminal prompt. This gives us idea that it is installed. Now the next step is we have already done some coding. Mind you that if you do not have, let's say, code ready, then what you can do after creating the repository, you can download the code. That is basically known as cloning the code. Right now we already have the source code ready. So we are going to push whatever code we have to the repository I have created. So let's do that. First of all, we are going to initiate the Git. Now the folder right now I have opened is of source code, and there is nothing related to Git at the moment. Now I'm going back to the VS Code. Here I'm going to initialize, I'll say git init. Now it says that initialized empty Git repository, and you see that now there is a folder created. And now you see that in the project explorer, all the files and folders are now in green color. That means it is being watched or tracked by the Git as well. Now here I am adding one more file, that is .gitignore. This file is going to contain all the information which is supposed to be ignored, that is not to be updated in the repository, because there might be few files, packages which you do not want that it should be updated on the Git repository. So that's what I'm doing. I'll say git add .gitignore. I press enter here. Now this actually creates a file. You see that there is a gitignore file existing in the source code folder. Now here also in the project, the gitignore file is created. Let's click on this, and you see that here we have few things like the node_modules folder is something which is not to be updated in the repository. Similarly, there can be many other things Even the production build is something which is related to production server and not the repository, the source code that is. So all those things, these folders will not be updated in the Git repository. Now let's check the status of current Git situation. So I just say Git status, all the things I'm trying with CLI, that is command line interface. Now you see on branch master, it says that there is no commits made yet. That means we have not yet updated anything on eStore repository which we have created. And these are the files which are not yet tracked by Git. Now these files which you see untracked, let's say few of the files or maybe all files, we want Git to track it. So we are doing that only. I'm just saying git add. If I just say dot, all the files will be tracked. But if you want specific files, then you can give just name. Let's say these are the files we want Git to track, even the folders. You just give the list of it and press enter. Now if I just say git status, you'll see that there are few files which are not in that list of untracked files, and the files which are being tracked that you see above the untracked files list. Now let's also add this public folder. So I'll say git add public. So this is also added. So whenever you update the repository, all the tracked files will be updated on the repository which we have created. Now comes the most important part. We have already created a repository, that is eStore, but this code is not yet pointed. So let's do that. We want that this code should be updated on that created repository. And for that, we'll just copy this link. Now I'll say git remote add. Then I'm giving an alias name through which we are going to refer the repository in future. Normally it's a practice that we keep this as origin, but you can choose your name also. And then we are going to paste that link which we have copied. Let's press enter. And this is going to connect the repository from this code. Now let's check the status once again. Now these files which you see are not yet updated on the repository. That is, as you see that it says that changes to be committed. That means it is yet to remain. It is yet to be committed. Let's commit the changes so that the eStore repository will be updated. I'll say git commit. In case whenever you commit, let's say you want to commit with a message, this message will be displayed on the repository that I'll show you afterwards. Let me just say -m. This is to commit the repository with a message. Let's say I give a message initial commit and we just pressed enter. So these are the things committed. All right, now things are committed. We are supposed to push the committed files. Before that, the push is going to happen on a branch. By default, a master branch is created when you create a repository. Let's check for branch. So I'll say git branch -a, that is for all. It will display all branches. So there is only one branch at the moment. Now the master branch which we have, this is where I'm going to push the repository. So I'll say git push -u for upstream, the alias name, that is the origin, and the branch name, and let's press enter. Now this is where it is going to ask the credentials. So I'm going to give my credentials here. Now it is asking for the permission and I'm going to click allow here. Now this job is actually one time. Later on, the IDEs are smart enough to deal with Git. Let me give the credentials here. So now you see that it has updated, that is, it has pushed the committed files. Now let's check in the browser. Let's check the message also, the one which I gave with -m. Are we able to see that or not? You see, for every file, it says there is an initial commit. So when you say -m at the prompt, it shows the message here. Let me also share an additional information here. If you are working with others' repository, because I own the repository, I do not have any problem. But in case if you have problem pushing it, then you can try this command. You can say git remote and then you set the URL, whichever URL it is, with the alias name. So here I'm going to say origin, and you'll paste the same URL, but before GitHub, you just add the username. You just have to give the username before the GitHub. So it will be GitHub username @GitHub. And then after this command, you push, then you will not have any problem. All right. So now we have created the main branch, that is the master branch. Let's say you have multiple, that is 5 team members working on this project. That means every developer will have his or her own branch, because people who work on the source code, they do not make the changes to this particular branch, that is the master. So there will be multiple branches created for individual developers, and those branches will be allocated to the user, the developer, and they will be making or updating the changes to that branch only, and then the main branch can be updated at a later stage. Now let's create the new branch. I'll say git checkout -b, the branch name. Let's say the branch name is eStore1. So now eStore1 branch is created, and at the moment now git, this particular code is pointing to eStore1. So if there is any changes committed, it will be updated on eStore1 and not on the master branch. Now let's check here also on the website. So you do not see the eStore here. The reason is we need to push. So let's do that. I'll say git push -u origin eStore1. That's the branch name. All right, now let's check again. And now you see that there is a branch eStore1 created. If I click on this, you see that the code is updated. Now let's say there is some change in this code, and that we need to push to the branch only, that is eStore branch only. So let's do that. Let's add a sample file somewhere. Let's add a file here. I'll say test.js. Let's give some text here. Nothing else, just import statement, and I'm going to save this file. Now let's check the status. I'll say git status. Okay, we have added a new file. So the first command I'm going to run is git add. Only this file I'm adding to git. Now next thing is, again we say status, and you see that the new file, it says src test.js. Now again we'll have to commit. So I'll say git commit, update a message. I'll say new test file added. And then comes the pushing the committed changes to the repository. eStore is the branch, so eStore1. Now let's check again in the repository whether we have this updated or not. Now you see there is a message displaying that eStore1 had recent pushes, and this message gives you the idea. You can simply click here and compare it. Let's click here. So this is the message, and new test file added was the change. Let's go back to the code. At the moment the master branch is selected, and here you won't find that file, that is the test.js. Now let me change the branch here, and you see that we have the test.js. So for that branch only this code is updated. Now let me go back to the coding. Here on the left hand side at the bottom, you see that the branch details, the current branch detail is displayed. At the moment you can also see the test.js in the project explorer. Now let's click on this branch, that is eStore1, and I just change the branch. Let's say master. Now if I do this, you will not be able to see the test.js. So now the IDE is handling this. You can use the IDE to manage lot of things related to GitHub. So now at the moment the branch is created, whatever changes are done, it is just meant for eStore1 branch. Remember, for a developer it is never a direct access to the master branch. It is always the team lead or project manager who does this job, who actually merges the code after the QA is done. Otherwise the developer will be working on specific branches only. Now let's talk about one more concept called collaborator. When I am working on this repository, that means I am the only one. But let's say I want to share this particular code with other developers also. People who are going to access this code will be the collaborator. So I'm going in the settings here and clicking manage access. The password is dot 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 dot. Now the manage access, here I'm going to say invite a collaborator, and I can give the GitHub username here. Let's say I'm giving a name Nikhil Kevat. If this fellow has an account, then this name will be suggested. Otherwise, you can give an email ID of the person where the invite will be automatically sent. So here I'm giving this name, the person who has helped me a lot in creating this tutorial, Nikhil. I'll say Nikhil Kevat and I'll add. And now Nikhil is a collaborator with this branch. This also means that for the eStore branch, Nikhil has the access. Now whatever changes Nikhil makes will be updated only on that specific branch. So this is a general idea about how a GitHub is used and how do you update the code. On regular basis, whenever there are new things or any updates I have to share about GitHub and code management, I'll make sure that I do during the tutorial.